The story begins far from home in the quiet blackness of deep space. The year was 2149. Humanity had already spread across a handful of nearby star systems, setting up colonies, mining operations, and research stations. Space travel had become routine, but the mystery of the universe still kept scientists awake at night. No matter how much technology advanced, there were still far more questions than answers. Among the many ships that explored the unknown, one vessel stood out, the Odyssey 12, a long-range survey ship assigned to map gravitational fields beyond the outer edge of the Milky Way. It was crewed by scientists, engineers, and explorers who had spent months drifting through the cold silence, collecting data from stars that no human eye had ever seen before. For weeks, the journey was quiet and predictable. The ship's sensors picked up standard radiation, dead asteroids, and empty pockets of dust. But one day, the Odyssey's navigation systems detected something strange, a distortion in gravity that didn't make sense. The readings were faint but unusually consistent, like a heartbeat in space. At first, the crew thought it was an equipment malfunction. Space was full of strange phenomena. Dark matter fields, black holes, and collapsed stars often caused misleading readings. But this anomaly didn't behave like any of those. The ship's artificial intelligence rechecked the data dozens of times, and every time the result came back the same. Something massive was out there, something too large to be natural. The captain ordered a closer approach. Even though it meant adjusting the ship's entire flight path, the crew prepared for days, running calculations to make sure they didn't accidentally fall into a gravity well. As they got closer, the sensors started to reveal more. A structure, massive and silent, far beyond anything they had ever seen. When the first long-range scans came through, the crew couldn't believe what they were looking at. The object wasn't spherical like a planet or rough like an asteroid. It had edges, straight lines, corners, and smooth surfaces. The data showed metallic reflection, repeating patterns, and signs of artificial design. It was impossible. No known technology could build something this large. It was almost the size of a small moon, and yet it had the precision of a machine. The scientists on board grew restless. Some thought it was an abandoned alien structure, while others feared it might be an ancient weapon. But no one could explain how something this huge could exist unnoticed for so long. The galaxy had been scanned millions of times by probes and satellites. How had everyone missed this? The captain decided to transmit the data back to Earth. The signal took hours to travel, but the response came faster than expected. The United Terran Coalition, the organization managing human space exploration, immediately ordered a full investigation. The Odyssey was told to maintain position and gather as much information as possible without getting too close. The crew continued their scans. As they analyzed the object, they found something even more shocking. There wasn't just one. There were several, massive silent giants, each orbiting the same dead star in a slow, perfect formation. It was as if they were part of a fleet, motionless, cold, and ancient. The discovery sent chills through everyone on board. They named them the Leviathans, planet-sized warships that seemed frozen in time. As days passed, the Odyssey recorded strange electromagnetic pulses coming from the ships. They were weak, almost like an echo. The signals didn't match any known communication frequency. It was unclear if they were random background noise or if something inside those giants was still active. The thought made everyone uneasy. Life aboard the Odyssey became tense. Some crew members couldn't sleep, worried that the massive structures might suddenly awaken. Others stood in silent awe at the observation window, staring at the distant shapes, dark still but impossibly majestic. The ships didn't move, but their presence was overwhelming, like ancient gods waiting in the dark. Earth soon confirmed the findings. The images shocked the scientific community. News agencies began to report rumors of artificial worlds and machines the size of planets. Governments stayed quiet, not wanting to cause panic. But curiosity spread fast. For the first time in history, humanity faced undeniable proof that they were not the first builders in the universe. A few weeks later, the United Terran Coalition sent a fleet of research vessels and military escorts toward the location. The Odyssey was ordered to remain in orbit until backup arrived. The crew watched from afar as the dark silhouettes of the Leviathans slowly rotated, catching the faint light of distant stars. Every reflection off their surface revealed more detail, strange markings, ridges, and enormous vents that looked like engines. When the research fleet arrived, they began sending drones and probes to scan the structures up close. The results were beyond imagination. The outer layer of the ships was made of a metal humanity had never seen before, a material stronger than any known alloy, resistant to radiation, and almost impossible to scan through. The internal layout was vast, with corridors stretching for kilometers and energy chambers that could power entire planets. Scientists couldn't agree on whether the ships were alive or dead. Their systems were inactive, but a low, steady hum of energy pulsed deep within them. It was like hearing the heartbeat of something sleeping. As more data came in, it became clear that these weren't just stations or colonies. They were warships, designed for battle on a scale no one could comprehend. Their weapon mounts were larger than skyscrapers. Their engines were buried deep within their cores, built to move entire worlds. Whoever created them had technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved, even beyond imagination. Back on Earth, leaders and scientists met in emergency sessions. What did this mean for humanity's place in the galaxy? Were these ships abandoned relics, or were they left here for a reason? And if they were weapons, who were they meant to fight? No one had answers. The more they learned, the more questions appeared. Then something happened that no one expected. As one of the probes tried to land on the surface of the largest Leviathan, the ship's instruments suddenly spiked. A small pulse of light rippled across the surface like a single breath. The probe immediately lost connection, and the Odyssey's systems went offline for a few seconds. When power returned, the crew stared at the readings in disbelief. The Leviathan had emitted an energy wave. It wasn't an explosion, and it didn't cause harm, but it was a clear sign of activity. The ship had reacted. The crew immediately contacted Earth, their voices tight with fear and excitement. Every scientist and commander across the network tuned in as the data streamed through. The wave wasn't random, it carried a pattern. It looked like a signal. Not human, not alien in any familiar sense, but deliberate. A transmission from something ancient. For the first time, humanity realized that these ships weren't entirely dead. Something inside them was still working. Or maybe something was waking up. The world held its breath. Theories spread everywhere. Some said it was an automated defense system responding to intrusion. Others believed it was a beacon, a call to whoever built them. The strangest idea whispered among the scientists was that the Leviathans weren't ships at all. Maybe they were guardians placed there to wait, to protect, or to warn. As the Odyssey's crew watched the dark shapes drift silently in space, a feeling of unease settled over everyone. They had wanted to discover life among the stars, but now they wondered if they had gone too far. The captain recorded one final message before transmitting it back to Earth. If anyone ever finds this record, know this, we are not alone, and whatever came before us, they were far beyond anything we can imagine. The transmission was simple, but it sent a chill through every human who heard it. News channels tried to downplay the event, calling it an unexplained cosmic structure, but the truth couldn't be hidden. The images leaked, enormous silent machines floating in darkness. The world reacted with fear, wonder, and disbelief. Religious groups called it proof of creation. Scientists called it the greatest discovery in human history. Governments called it a potential threat. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity's understanding of the universe had just changed forever. In the weeks that followed, deep space signals became erratic. Communication relays across nearby systems picked up faint energy patterns, identical to the one the Leviathan had released. It was as if the signal had traveled across the galaxy, echoing from one corner to another. No one knew who might be listening or who might answer. The Odyssey continued its watch, floating silently among the giants, waiting for the next sign of movement. The crew no longer saw them as lifeless relics, but as sleeping titans, holding secrets older than stars. They didn't know it yet, but what they had discovered would change the balance of the galaxy forever. Because when humanity uncovered the planet-sized warships, they didn't just find the past. They awakened it. After the shocking discovery made by the Odyssey 12, Earth became the center of attention for the first time in galactic history. The data they had sent home was so unbelievable that many scientists first thought it was a hoax or a system malfunction. But when more survey ships confirmed the readings, everyone knew the truth. Those weren't planets. They were machines, and not just ordinary machines. They were gigantic structures built with intelligence, precision, and purpose. The word Leviathans began to spread across every scientific circle, news network, and political meeting on Earth. What were they? Who built them? Why were they so far from everything else? Within weeks, the United Terran Coalition, humanity's joint space authority, organized a massive response. Dozens of research ships, engineers, and defense vessels were sent toward the site. The media called it the most important mission in human history. The public couldn't stop talking about it. People stared at the news broadcast showing the enormous black shapes in space, trying to imagine how anyone could build something so large. Some said they looked like sleeping monsters. Others said they were like floating cities. But deep down, everyone felt the same quiet fear. If someone built these once, what else might still be out there? When the first fleet arrived near the Leviathans, they were greeted by silence. The dead star in the background gave off a faint cold glow, and the ships drifted like shadows against its dim light. The crew aboard each vessel stared at their screens, recording data, scanning the surfaces, and sending out drones. Every new image made hearts race faster. The Leviathans were not random designs. Each one had structure. Huge corridors, layered armor, circular ports that looked like weapon mounts, and patterns that resembled ancient writing. The metal was unlike anything humans had ever created. It didn't rust, it didn't melt, and it absorbed radiation instead of reflecting it. It was as if the ships were designed to last forever. Scientists from different nations worked together to study the data. They were no longer competing. They were united by curiosity and fear. For the first time, humanity faced something truly beyond them. It was humbling and terrifying at the same time. Meanwhile, on Earth, the public's imagination exploded. Artists painted what they thought the ships might look like up close. Children played games pretending to discover them. Documentaries ran 24 hours a day, analyzing every new piece of footage. Some said the Leviathans were ancient defense systems. Others believed they were vessels from another universe. Governments tried to calm the excitement. They released only small amounts of information, carefully avoiding anything that could cause panic. But the truth had a way of spreading, and soon everyone knew. Something had moved inside one of the ships. It was only for a few seconds, but it was enough to change everything. A faint pulse of light had rippled across the surface of the largest Leviathan. The energy pattern wasn't natural. It was structured like a code or a signal. The scientific teams couldn't agree on what it meant, but it proved one thing. The ships weren't completely dead. Somewhere deep inside, something was still working. That single pulse was enough to send a wave of panic and fascination through every colony and city on Earth. The coalition increased its presence near the discovery site, deploying powerful satellites and energy shields just in case. They didn't know what could happen next. The commander of the lead research vessel ordered caution. Drones were sent inside the outer layers of the nearest Leviathan, and what they found was breathtaking. The interior was enormous, with long, dark corridors stretching beyond the limits of the drone's lights. The walls were smooth, covered with unfamiliar markings that glowed faintly when the machines passed by. The air inside wasn't breathable, but it contained a trace of elements that suggested the ships had once supported life, or something similar to it. In one section, they found massive cylindrical chambers lined up like engines, but they were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were built from unknown metals, some of which didn't appear on any known periodic table. The energy readings from them were weak but consistent, as if the ship's heart was still beating very slowly. When the data reached Earth, scientists debated endlessly about what it all meant. Some said the ships had been left behind by a civilization so advanced that even their ruins could survive for millions of years. Others believed they were automated war machines left on standby until they were needed again. But one question haunted everyone. If they were built for war, who were they meant to fight? While scientists searched for answers, something unexpected happened across the galaxy. Strange signals began appearing on deep space receivers. The signals weren't from Earth. They were coming from distant systems, some inhabited, some not. And every single one carried the same pattern as the energy pulse from the Leviathan. That was when humanity realized they weren't the only ones who had detected it. For the first time in human history, Earth received direct transmissions from alien civilizations. The messages were brief, coded, and filled with caution. Most of them said the same thing. You have awakened the giants. At first, people thought it was a hoax, but then the coalition confirmed the messages were genuine. Multiple non-human sources had detected the pulse, and they all seemed to know what it was. The aliens didn't threaten humanity, but their tone was filled with alarm. That's when the galaxy's attention turned toward Earth. Across hundreds of light years, unknown observers began watching. Human probes and satellites started picking up signs of cloaked ships and transmissions that weren't meant for human ears. It was clear that the discovery had triggered something much larger than anyone could have imagined. The coalition sent urgent reports to all human colonies, ordering them to go on alert. The message was clear: avoid further contact with the Leviathans until more was understood. But curiosity was stronger than fear. The scientists didn't want to stop. As they continued studying the ships, one team found a pattern etched across the Leviathan's outer hulls. It wasn't random decoration, it was language. The markings repeated across every vessel, each one written in perfect alignment as if carved by lasers. They weren't just labels or numbers. They looked like messages or warnings. When translated through computer analysis, part of the pattern seemed to say something chilling. Guardians of Silence. No one knew what it meant. But the phrase quickly spread through the research community. Were these ships guarding something? Or were they meant to ensure that something stayed quiet forever? The more scientists searched, the more they felt as if they were being watched. The drones that entered deeper into the Leviathan sometimes malfunctioned for no reason. Cameras flickered, signals dropped, and strange mechanical echoes filled the transmission feeds. Yet despite all the fear, no one wanted to stop. Humanity had waited centuries to find proof of advanced life. Now that proof was right in front of them, cold, silent, and waiting to be understood. Weeks passed and tensions grew. Alien ships began appearing near the outer edges of the Milky Way, keeping their distance but clearly observing the human fleet. They never communicated directly, but their presence was a message in itself. It was as if the entire galaxy had decided to keep an eye on humanity, waiting to see what they would do next. Inside the research fleet, people argued endlessly. Some said humanity should leave before they accidentally triggered something dangerous. Others said this was their destiny, to uncover what was hidden and learn the truth about the universe. Then, one night something new happened. The largest Leviathan began to move. It wasn't much, just a slow shift, a change in rotation, but the movement was undeniable. The sensors recorded a low vibration that ran through the entire system. Every crew member froze, watching the data screens. The ship was no longer drifting aimlessly. It was aligning itself toward something. No one knew whether to be amazed or terrified. Messages flew across every communication channel back to Earth. Governments scrambled to prepare. The news broke worldwide within hours. Humanity had awakened something that was never meant to wake. And as the stars reflected off the dark metallic surface of the Leviathan, a faint blue light began to glow at its center. No sound. No warning. Just a slow, steady pulse. Like the heartbeat of something ancient remembering it was alive. On Earth, people gathered in front of screens, watching live footage from the Odyssey and the other ships. Billions of eyes stared at the glowing giant. Some prayed, some cried, some couldn't look away. Humanity had always dreamed of finding intelligent life, but no one ever asked what would happen when intelligence found them back. In that silent moment, the crew of the Odyssey realized something that would stay with them forever. The Leviathans weren't waiting to be discovered. They were waiting to be remembered, and now, after countless ages, they had finally been found. The discovery didn't just change science or technology. It changed what it meant to be human. The universe was no longer a quiet place full of empty stars. It was alive, ancient, and full of secrets that were now beginning to wake. And somewhere out there, far beyond the reach of any human ship, other civilizations were watching, whispering one word across the stars. The moment the Leviathans moved, the ripple was felt across space in ways no one could have imagined. The slow rotation of the largest ship had triggered something deeper, a pulse that wasn't just physical. It was a signal, a call sent across the void. At first, the human fleet barely noticed it. Their sensors were busy scanning, mapping, and decoding every detail of the massive warships. But then the reading spiked. The signal wasn't random noise. It carried structure, patterns, and energy that defied the known laws of physics. It was deliberate. The scientists aboard the Odyssey and the other vessels stared at their instruments in disbelief. The pulse had a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, but one that stretched across thousands of kilometers. Each beat carried a resonance, a frequency that seemed to reach out into the emptiness. It was as if the Leviathans themselves were speaking, or trying to. As the signal traveled further into space, it began to be detected by deep space monitoring stations back on Earth. At first, technicians thought it was a glitch, interference from a solar flare, or even a misalignment in the satellites. But as the readings continued to climb, it became clear this was something new, something alive, in a sense that humans had never encountered. News of the signal spread quickly, and experts around the world were pulled into emergency meetings. Governments, scientific organizations, and even independent research groups debated the implications. Was the Leviathan sending a distress signal, a warning, or was it some kind of automatic activation left behind by its builders millions of years ago? Some scientists believed it was a wake-up call. The ships had been dormant for eons, waiting for a trigger. Others argued it was a form of communication, intended for whoever had the knowledge to understand it. Yet nobody could fully decode the frequency. The signal was complex, shifting in ways no human algorithm could predict. Meanwhile, the Leviathan's movement began to change. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but then more pronounced. The largest ship slowly adjusted its orbit around the dead star. Its rotation and the faint blue glow emanating from its core created energy fluctuations that shook the sensors of every nearby human vessel. Engineers aboard the fleet worked frantically to analyze the effects, fearing that even a small miscalculation could be catastrophic. But the signal wasn't just affecting humans. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations began detecting it. Some were hundreds of light years away. Advanced civilizations that had monitored their own sectors for centuries. Their instruments picked up the pulse, and within hours reports reached humanity through intercepted communications and intelligence networks. The message, or rather the effect, was unmistakable. Every civilization with the technology to detect it reacted immediately. Some panicked, recalling legends of planet-sized warships and dormant armies. Others recognized the pulse as an ancient code, a memory of a long-lost civilization whose technology had been thought to be myth. Humanity had unknowingly triggered a chain reaction that extended far beyond the Milky Way's edge. What had started as a simple discovery by the Odyssey 12 had become a galaxy-wide alert. Within days, fleets of alien ships began moving toward the Leviathans. They didn't communicate at first. They simply observed from a distance, cloaking their presence while keeping every movement monitored. Back on Earth, the reaction was immediate. Governments called emergency sessions. News outlets struggled to explain what was happening without causing panic. Scientists worked around the clock trying to analyze the pulse, decode its structure, and predict its effects. It was a race against time, not just for knowledge, but for survival. As the human fleet monitored the Leviathans, they realized that the pulse carried more than just energy. It seemed to be a signal designed to provoke response. Human sensors detected subtle changes in gravitational fields and electromagnetic emissions. The Leviathans were not simply drifting objects. They were active, aware on some level, and possibly intelligent in a way humans could not yet comprehend. The first attempt to communicate with the Leviathans came from the Odyssey. Using a combination of radio waves, light signals, and encoded energy bursts, scientists tried to send simple messages. There was no response, not in a conventional sense, but the ship's readings showed a change. The pulse intensified and shifted in pattern. It was clear the Leviathans were reacting to human attempts to communicate. The realization struck every member of the fleet. These ships were not just machines. They were more like sentient constructs, ancient and patient, but capable of sensing intrusion and responding. The human crew felt a mix of awe and fear. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars with hope and curiosity. Now they were confronted with something far beyond imagination, something that could observe, respond, and possibly judge them. Then the signal spread further. Distant civilizations began sending messages back. Some were warnings. Do not awaken them. Leave the site immediately. Others were questions. Who has found them? Who has control? And some civilizations, more curious than cautious, began sending their own observation fleets toward the Leviathans. The galaxy had suddenly become aware of humanity. Earth was no longer a quiet, developing planet on the outskirts of galactic maps. Humans were now participants in a network of civilizations aware of the same ancient threat or opportunity. The pulse from the Leviathans had marked them. Meanwhile, the human fleet worked tirelessly to understand what was happening inside the Leviathans. Probes sent deep into the interior found enormous chambers, machinery that pulsed with energy, and conduits that seemed designed for interstellar travel on a scale humans could barely comprehend. The technology was millions of years ahead of anything humanity had created. Every discovery raised more questions than it answered. The crews of the human ships began to experience something unusual. Sensors occasionally picked up faint electromagnetic patterns that resembled communication, but they couldn't be deciphered. Some described it as a language of light and energy, a pattern that seemed almost musical in rhythm. Every crew member who observed it felt a strange sense of awareness, as if the Leviathans were testing them, watching not just their actions, but their intentions. Humanity realized with growing unease that the Leviathans were not just dormant weapons. They were guardians of some kind, left behind by a civilization far older than any human record. Their purpose was unclear, perhaps protection, perhaps warning, perhaps judgment. The pulse that had spread across the galaxy was a signal to all who could detect it. It was as if the universe itself was paying attention. Back on Earth, the psychological impact was immense. People struggled to grasp the scale of what had been discovered. Social media exploded with speculation, conspiracy theories, and art inspired by the Leviathans. Educational institutions began emergency programs to train new generations in advanced physics and interstellar engineering. Humanity was waking up to a new reality. They were no longer insignificant. They were now part of a galaxy where ancient machines and civilizations coexisted, and where every action could have consequences far beyond their understanding. The United Terran Coalition issued strict orders. No human ship was to interfere directly with the Leviathans. Observations were permitted, data collection was encouraged, but engagement was forbidden until more was understood. But curiosity is a powerful force. Scientists and engineers continued their research in secret, driven by the desire to uncover the truth. Weeks turned into months. The pulse from the Leviathans continued to reverberate across space. Alien fleets remained nearby, observing humans and the ancient machines. No aggression had been shown, but everyone involved understood that the slightest misstep could trigger a catastrophic response. Then, one day, the signal intensified dramatically. Energy readings spiked across the human fleet. The largest Leviathan slowly began to move again, adjusting its position with precision that left engineers struggling to calculate its trajectory. The glow at its core brightened, illuminating massive segments of its surface. The pulse was no longer just detectable, it was overwhelming, a reminder that something far greater than humans or their technology was now awake. For the crew of the Odyssey, it was a moment that combined fear, excitement, and awe. They were the first humans to witness the awakening of a machine, designed on a scale beyond comprehension. Every sensor, every instrument confirmed the truth. The Leviathans were alive in some sense. They were not threatening yet, but they were aware, responding and conscious of being observed. Earth watched from afar, its population riveted by every broadcast and report. Schools, offices, and homes paused as news updates detailed every development. People debated endlessly about what humanity should do next. The discovery had unified the planet in one way. Everyone understood that humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. And somewhere, far beyond the human fleet, the alien civilizations continued their observation. Some began discreet communications, sharing warnings, histories, and theories with one another. The pulse had not only awakened the Leviathans, but had also rekindled the memory of the galaxy's ancient past. Humanity had uncovered a truth more profound than any war, any scientific breakthrough, or any exploration mission. They had awakened something old, immense, and patient, and now the galaxy was watching to see. After the Leviathan's awakening signal spread across the galaxy, the human fleet suddenly realized they were no longer alone in the attention they received. For months, alien civilizations had remained distant observers, cloaked in silence, but the pulse had changed that. Now, fleets of ships appeared near the outskirts of human-controlled space, their technology unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Their sizes, shapes, and glowing energy cores made the human vessel seem like toys by comparison. For the first time, Earth's leaders had to confront the reality of being truly noticed in the galactic community. The United Terran Coalition called an emergency assembly, gathering scientists, military strategists, and diplomats to assess the situation. Screens across the globe displayed the alien ships in orbit near the Leviathans. Their designs were elegant and terrifying, with sweeping curves and vast panels that hummed with energy. None of these civilizations had attempted direct contact yet, but their presence alone was a warning. Humanity had crossed a threshold that no one had warned them about, awakening the Leviathans. On board the human fleet, the crews struggled to understand the aliens' intentions. Every instrument was scanning, every probe was active, but the signals from these distant ships were strange, almost alien in the truest sense. No communication protocol could fully decode the patterns. The alien ships didn't speak in words or signals humans understood. They communicated through energy pulses and gravitational modulations, subtle shifts in space that seemed to carry meaning. Scientists speculated endlessly. Some believed the aliens were curious, drawn by the pulse, and merely wanted to observe how humans interacted with the Leviathans. Others warned that the presence of the alien fleets could indicate hostility. Humanity had no experience negotiating with civilizations capable of building ships thousands of kilometers long, ships that could destroy planets with ease. The stakes were higher than any war humanity had ever imagined. Back on Earth, public anxiety reached a peak. News broadcasts showed the images of the alien fleets, their silent orbits, and the glowing Leviathans. Citizens were both terrified and mesmerized. Social media was flooded with speculation. Some called it the end of humanity as they knew it. Others celebrated it as the moment Earth had become truly important in the galaxy. The entire planet was watching as humans faced the unknown. The coalition moved quickly. A network of observation posts and deep space sensors was established to monitor the alien fleets. Defense ships were repositioned and energy shields were deployed around key stations. While the Leviathans remained in the same orbit, their subtle movements and energy emissions became the focus of every calculation. Engineers tried to determine whether the Leviathans could be controlled, neutralized, or even communicated with. But every attempt was met with uncertainty. For the human crews near the Leviathans, the situation was tense. Every day felt like walking on a knife's edge. One wrong maneuver could provoke the alien fleets. Probes sometimes malfunctioned, possibly due to interference from the Leviathans themselves. Crew members spoke in hushed tones, aware that the eyes of the galaxy were watching. Fear and excitement blended in equal measure. Fear of what could happen if something went wrong, and excitement that humans were the first to witness these ancient machines. The alien civilizations did more than just observe. Over time, a pattern emerged. Some fleets positioned themselves in ways that mirrored the Leviathans' orbits, creating a formation that suggested understanding. Others sent discrete energy pulses, not attacks but warnings. One civilization even attempted a rudimentary demonstration of power, moving one of their massive ships in a calculated orbit to test human responses. The message was clear. The galaxy was aware, and humans were now a factor in a story much older than they could comprehend. Earth's leaders convened daily. Debate raged over how to proceed. Some argued that humans should withdraw completely, abandoning the Leviathans to avoid confrontation. Others insisted that the Leviathans could provide unprecedented knowledge and power, and abandoning them would be a wasted opportunity. There was no consensus. Every decision carried weight, and every mistake could provoke conflict. Meanwhile, scientists continued their analysis of the Leviathans. The inner structures revealed vast energy chambers and systems designed for a level of engineering humanity had never imagined. There were corridors large enough for fleets of ships to move through, chambers that could support life for centuries, and energy conduits that pulsed like arteries of a living being. Every probe that returned from the interior added to the wonder and the fear. As the alien fleets maintained their distance, small communications attempts began. Simple energy pulses, repeated patterns, and subtle shifts in gravitation were transmitted toward human ships. Decoding these messages was slow and difficult. Some humans speculated that the aliens were testing them, measuring intelligence, patience, and intent. Others feared the aliens might attack if humans misinterpreted their signals. In the midst of this, the Leviathans themselves continued to act. Their pulses became more frequent, and slight changes in their positions suggested they were aware of both the humans and the alien fleets. It was as if the ships had been left to observe the galaxy, and now they were fully awake, assessing who was worthy or dangerous. Crew members reported strange readings, energy patterns that seemed almost emotional, vibrations that felt like awareness. Scientists struggled to explain these phenomena, but one thing was undeniable. The Leviathans were conscious in a way humanity could barely comprehend. As tension rose, a breakthrough occurred. Human scientists discovered that one of the Leviathan's energy pulses could be manipulated. By timing certain signals, they could elicit minor reactions, a shift in rotation, a brighter glow in specific sections, or a pattern that repeated in the energy field. It was small, almost trivial, but it confirmed that communication might be possible. The crews realized that the Leviathans were not just passive machines. They were intelligent, capable of responding to stimuli. This discovery led to a new question. If humanity could interact with the Leviathans, could they also control or negotiate with them? The implications were staggering. Any civilization capable of influencing these planet-sized machines would hold unprecedented power. The human fleet now faced a choice: continue cautiously or attempt bolder interaction. Every scientist, officer, and diplomat knew that their decision could determine humanity's survival. Meanwhile, the alien civilizations began to react in subtle ways. Ships moved into positions that mirrored human experiments with the Leviathans. Energy pulses were sent that seemed to mimic the humans' signals, as if the aliens were testing the humans' understanding. Every action, every response was measured. Humanity realized they were part of a larger game, one where mistakes could be catastrophic. Back on Earth, people followed every update with rapt attention. News outlets broadcasted simulations of the Leviathan's interiors, animations of alien fleets, and speculative explanations of the pulse signals. The world's population was captivated, sharing theories, creating art, and debating endlessly. The discovery had united humanity in fascination and fear. As months passed, the situation stabilized, not because it was safe, but because everyone learned to adapt. Human crews learned the patterns of the Leviathan's pulses, alien fleets maintained respectful distance, and Earth's leaders created protocols for every possible outcome. Humanity was no longer passive observers. They had become participants in a complex, ancient network of civilizations and technology that spanned the galaxy. And yet, beneath the careful diplomacy and scientific progress, unease remained. The Leviathan's awareness continued to grow. The pulse patterns suggested intelligence, and sometimes the energy reading seemed almost deliberate, as if the ships were testing humanity, probing their intentions and learning who they were dealing with. One night, as the human fleet drifted in formation near the largest Leviathan, the crew witnessed a change that left everyone speechless. The glow from the core intensified, creating beams of light that stretched into space like fingers. The energy pulse became rhythmic, almost musical, and the readings from the alien fleet showed subtle but unmistakable reactions. The galaxy had noticed humanity's attempts to interact, and the Leviathans themselves were responding in ways that no human could fully understand. It was clear that humanity had entered a new era. No longer confined to the edge of galactic observation, humans were now central to a story millions of years in the making. The Leviathans had awakened, alien civilizations had taken notice, and Earth had become a focal point in the balance of the galaxy. Every decision mattered. Every signal, every movement could trigger events far beyond human comprehension. Humanity had discovered something extraordinary, something terrifying, and something that would define their place in the cosmos forever. The Leviathans were alive. The alien fleets were watching, and humanity was learning step by step what it truly meant to be noticed by the universe. The galaxy had spoken, and humanity had answered. But the most important question remained unanswered. What would come next? As the Leviathans continued to pulse and shift in their orbits, humanity's scientists realized that mere observation was no longer enough. They needed to understand what these ships were, who had built them, and why they had been left abandoned for millions of years. The United Terran Coalition assembled a team of the brightest minds from every field: astrophysics, engineering, linguistics, and even philosophy. Their mission was clear: to uncover the truth behind the Leviathans and the civilization that had created them. The first step was decoding the markings on the ship's surfaces. These were not ordinary designs or symbols. They were patterns that repeated with an almost musical rhythm. Some resembled circuitry, others geometric shapes, and some appeared to carry language-like structures. For weeks, teams worked around the clock, feeding data into advanced quantum computers and AI systems designed to find patterns beyond human perception. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The symbols weren't random. They were a form of communication left by a civilization that had vanished long before humans even evolved on Earth. Their messages spoke of war, survival, and caution. It was clear that these beings were highly advanced, so advanced that their technology could manipulate stars, move planets, and create machines the size of worlds. Humanity learned the name of the creators from fragments etched across the Leviathan's hulls, the Aelrin. Very little was known about them, and the records were fragmented, leaving gaps that even the most powerful computers struggled to fill. The Aelrin had disappeared millions of years ago, leaving only their warships behind. The ships themselves were their legacy, powerful machines designed for a purpose that humans could barely imagine. As scientists delved deeper, they discovered that the Leviathans were more than war machines. Their cores contained energy systems capable of powering entire planets. Their internal chambers could sustain life, perhaps even civilizations, for centuries. Some sections of the ships seemed to store knowledge, enormous data arrays etched in strange materials, containing information about technology, navigation, and even culture. Humanity had stumbled upon a treasure trove of intelligence that could change everything. The team quickly realized the significance of what they had found. If humans could understand even a fraction of the Leviathan's technology, it could propel humanity forward by centuries in science and engineering. Yet there was a lingering unease. The ships had been built for war, and their creators had left warnings everywhere. The Aelrin had clearly intended for these machines to remain dormant, and every signal the humans had sent so far had disturbed that careful balance. One of the most astonishing discoveries came when a probe entered a massive chamber near the core of the largest Leviathan. The chamber was filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with light, and sensors detected energy patterns that resembled thought, or at least a form of awareness. It was as if the ship itself was alive in a sense humans could barely understand. Analysis of the crystals revealed something even more extraordinary. They contained records of the Aelrin's history, not in words but in energy patterns that could be translated into comprehensible forms with advanced algorithms. The records told of a civilization that had once ruled vast stretches of the galaxy, whose knowledge and technology had surpassed anything humanity had imagined. They had fought wars so massive that entire star systems had been reshaped by their battles. But then, something catastrophic had happened. The records hinted at a war that had destroyed the Aelrin. Their civilization collapsed under its own power, leaving behind the Leviathans as both guardians and warnings. The ships were designed to protect the galaxy from the same fate, to ensure that such destructive power could never rise again without consequences. Humanity was beginning to understand the enormity of what they had awakened. As the researchers studied the records, they realized that the Leviathans were more than machines. They were sentinels. Their purpose was to maintain balance and prevent another civilization from repeating the mistakes of the Aelrin. The energy pulses humans had detected were not just signals. They were warnings. The ships were assessing humanity, learning how humans might interact with their environment, and perhaps even judging whether humanity was ready for the knowledge and power they contained. The implications were staggering. Humans were now participants in a story that began millions of years before their existence. They were not just explorers. They were inheritors of a legacy that could either elevate them or destroy them. Every decision, every signal sent to the Leviathans carried weight. Mistakes could trigger responses that no human weapon could withstand. While the scientific teams worked to decode the Leviathans, the United Terran Coalition also faced external pressures. Alien civilizations continued to observe, some cautiously, some with suspicion. The pulse of the Leviathans had not only awakened humanity, but had also alerted other species to their presence. Diplomats and strategists debated how to communicate with these civilizations, fearing that any misstep could be interpreted as aggression. In the midst of this uncertainty, the human teams made another breakthrough. By carefully timing energy signals and analyzing the Leviathan's responses, they discovered that the ships could be influenced, not controlled, but guided. Minor adjustments to their rotation, energy output, and orientation were possible. It was proof that communication might be achievable on a larger scale. Humans were no longer just observers. They were participants in a dialogue with a technology older than life itself. But the deeper the scientists dug, the more they realized the gravity of their situation. The Leviathans were not tools to be used recklessly. Their creators had built safeguards, mechanisms that could activate catastrophic defenses if the ships were tampered with improperly. One miscalculation could awaken destructive systems that had lain dormant for millions of years. The excitement of discovery was tempered by the sobering responsibility of stewardship. Amid these discoveries, the crews of the human fleet began experiencing something extraordinary. Some reported strange visions while monitoring the Leviathan's pulses, flashes of stars, distant planets, and structures that seemed both alien and familiar. Psychologists studying these effects concluded that the Leviathans might be projecting information directly into the human mind through energy patterns, as if offering glimpses of their creator's knowledge. The experience was not dangerous, but it left humans feeling deeply connected to something ancient and vast. The more humanity understood, the more they realized they had stumbled onto a truth far greater than any previous achievement. They were not just witnessing advanced technology. They were engaging with a civilization's final act, a warning etched in metal and energy for the benefit of all who came after. The Leviathans were guardians, and humanity had become their chosen audience. The alien civilizations observing the humans also began to react in new ways. Some sent messages through complex energy patterns attempting to share their interpretations of the Leviathan's purpose. Others remained cautious, maintaining distant observation while waiting to see how humans would proceed. Earth became a focal point of attention, a bridge between ancient technology and the living galaxy. The United Terran Coalition had to make critical decisions. They could attempt to fully explore the Leviathans, risking unpredictable consequences, or they could take a cautious approach, observing and learning while avoiding interference. After extensive debates, they agreed on a middle path: cautious engagement, prioritizing understanding and communication, while ensuring all defensive measures were in place. As the months passed, humanity continued to unlock pieces of the Elrin legacy. Energy patterns were translated into knowledge about starship construction, sustainable energy systems, and even interstellar navigation that made human technology look primitive in comparison. It became clear that the Leviathans were more than weapons. They were repositories of knowledge designed to elevate or warn those who encountered them. Despite the excitement, a sense of humility grew among the human crews. They understood that they were caretakers now, responsible for technology far beyond their comprehension. The Leviathans were not just machines. They were a test of humanity's maturity and wisdom. Every choice mattered, every experiment carried weight, and every signal could influence the responses of both the ships and the galaxy at large. For the first time, humans grasped the scale of their place in the universe. They were no longer isolated observers drifting in a small corner of the galaxy. They were participants in an ancient story, one that began millions of years ago with the rise of the Elrin, and continued now through the actions of a species that had just learned it was being watched. The Leviathans pulsed steadily, almost as if they were acknowledging humanity's efforts. Alien fleets maintained their positions, respecting the delicate balance. And on Earth, people waited, watched, and wondered what the future might bring. Humanity had discovered a legacy older than civilization itself, and the choices they made in the coming years would define not just their survival, but their role in a galaxy filled with ancient knowledge and power. The truth about the Leviathans had begun to emerge, and humanity understood one fundamental fact: they were now guardians, students, and participants in ASC. The Leviathans had been awake for months now, and humanity had grown accustomed to the careful dance of observation, communication, and caution. But even with all the data collected, all the breakthroughs achieved, one thing remained clear: the galaxy was watching. and humanity's choices could ripple across countless worlds. The United Terran Coalition had established a permanent presence near the largest Leviathan. Research stations, defensive fleets, and observation posts surrounded the massive warship at a safe distance. Humanity was no longer merely explorers. They had become caretakers of something that transcended time, technology, and imagination. Every day brought new revelations. The Leviathan's pulses grew more complex, more responsive. Minor shifts in human signals were mirrored in the ship's energy flows. It was almost as if the Leviathans were testing the humans' intentions, gauging their curiosity, patience, and restraint. Scientists began to refer to the interaction as a conversation, even if it was unlike any conversation humans had ever known. Humanity learned quickly that this was not a game. The Leviathan's cores contained unimaginable power, capable of destabilizing entire planetary systems if activated improperly. Even small errors in energy calibration could trigger consequences that no human weapon could prevent. Every measurement, every experiment was double-checked, triple-checked, and constantly monitored. Yet despite the danger, humanity pressed forward. The knowledge contained in the Leviathans was irresistible. Energy systems that could power cities indefinitely, navigation methods that bent spacetime, and construction techniques that rivaled the laws of physics. It was a treasure trove of science and technology. Humanity realized that understanding even a fraction of it could change their civilization forever. The alien civilizations that had first observed the Leviathans began to respond more openly. Some sent emissaries in the form of cloaked observation ships, transmitting subtle signals that humans could decode. Others positioned their fleets to demonstrate restraint, signaling that they were monitoring humanity, but did not wish to provoke conflict. The galaxy was teaching humanity a lesson in diplomacy and patience. On board the human fleet, crews began to notice subtle changes in their own perception. The energy pulses from the Leviathans seemed to stimulate thought patterns, intuition, and creativity. Engineers solved problems they had struggled with for years. Scientists made connections across disciplines, and even philosophical thinkers reported insights that transcended normal human understanding. It was as if the Leviathans were sharing a fragment of their intelligence with humanity. But the lessons came with caution. Not all interactions were benign. One probe malfunctioned catastrophically after entering a restricted chamber, sending energy feedback through the ship's systems. No one was hurt, but the incident served as a stark reminder that the Leviathans were not toys to be played with. They were intelligent, aware, and capable of responding to mistakes. Humanity realized that survival depended not on dominance but on respect. Every signal sent to the Leviathans had to be measured, deliberate, and careful. Any attempt to manipulate or control them recklessly could provoke a response from both the ships and the watching civilizations. Humanity was learning humility on a galactic scale. The first direct communication breakthrough came unexpectedly. By sending carefully timed pulses and analyzing the Leviathan's responses, scientists managed to establish a rudimentary pattern of interaction. It wasn't language as humans knew it, but a series of energy sequences that could convey basic intent: curiosity, caution, acknowledgement. It was small, almost symbolic, but it proved one thing: the Leviathans were listening and they could respond. This success transformed human strategy. No longer passive observers, humans became participants in a vast ancient dialogue. They experimented with non-invasive communication techniques, using light pulses, energy fluctuations, and even gravitational waves to elicit responses. Each success was a step toward understanding the intentions of the Elrin, the long-lost creators of the Leviathans. The galaxy, too, reacted. Alien civilizations observed these interactions closely. Some were skeptical, others impressed. The humans' careful approach earned them respect, signaling that they were intelligent and cautious enough to interact responsibly with ancient, powerful technology. Humanity had gained not just knowledge but credibility in the eyes of the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Leviathans revealed more of their secrets. The crystalline cores contained memories of the Aelrin civilization, visions of star systems, structures, battles, and civilizations that no human history book could ever describe. Some researchers experienced these visions directly through energy interfaces, feeling as if they were briefly present in a world millions of years old. It was exhilarating, humbling, and terrifying all at once. These discoveries prompted humanity to reflect deeply on their place in the universe. They were no longer isolated. They were part of an interstellar community, linked through the legacy of a civilization far older than themselves. The Leviathans were not just machines. They were teachers, guardians, and witnesses. They were a bridge between the past and the present, offering humanity a glimpse into possibilities previously unimaginable. Despite the awe, caution remained paramount. The United Terran Coalition established strict protocols for interacting with the Leviathans. All experiments were monitored, all signals were logged, and every possible safeguard was in place. Humanity could not afford mistakes. The lessons of the Aelrin civilization were clear. Immense power carried immense responsibility. Over time, humans began to harness fragments of the Leviathan's technology safely. Energy systems were replicated on a small scale, advanced propulsion methods were tested, and new materials that could withstand extreme conditions were synthesized. Humanity was learning without overstepping, guided by a careful respect for the ancient guardians. The alien civilizations began to treat humanity differently as well. Observation gave way to cautious collaboration. Messages were exchanged in carefully structured energy sequences. Some civilizations offered guidance, others shared fragments of their own knowledge, and a few simply watched, waiting to see how humans would evolve in this new era. Earth had moved from a distant observer to a participant in a galaxy of advanced civilizations. As the months turned into years, humanity's understanding of the Leviathans deepened. They learned that the ships were more than repositories of knowledge. They were also capable of immense defensive power. Any threat to the balance they maintained could trigger mechanisms designed to protect the galaxy from dangerous civilizations. This knowledge reinforced the need for patience, humility, and cooperation. Humanity began to see itself differently. They were no longer a small, fragile species confined to one planet. They were now stewards of knowledge, guardians of responsibility, and participants in a legacy that stretched across millions of years. The Leviathans had not simply been discovered. They had been entrusted to humans who were learning how to act wisely. Back on Earth, public perception changed as well. Citizens followed the progress closely, inspired by the possibilities of new energy systems, safer space travel, and interstellar diplomacy. People realized that humanity's future was no longer limited to one planet. It could extend across the stars, shaped by intelligence, caution, and cooperation. Despite the progress, challenges remained. The Leviathan's energy pulses continued to influence human perception, sometimes causing disorientation or hallucinations in those who interacted with them too intensely. Alien civilizations remained nearby, reminding humanity that the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. But the lessons learned were clear. Knowledge, patience, and respect were the keys to survival and progress. The final breakthrough came when a stable method of long-distance communication was established with the Leviathans. Using energy sequences, humans could now ask questions and receive complex responses encoded in light and electromagnetic patterns. The dialogue was slow, deliberate, and cautious, but it allowed humanity to gain unprecedented insight into the technology, history, and philosophy of the Aelrin civilization. Through these communications, humans learned that the Leviathan's purpose was not only protection, but also preparation. They had been waiting for a species capable of understanding them, capable of learning without destroying. Humanity had passed the first test, demonstrating restraint, intelligence, and curiosity balanced with caution. The galaxy took note. Alien civilizations acknowledged humanity's progress, some offering alliances, others observing quietly. Earth had become a symbol of a new era, a species that could interact with technology older than the stars and survive the experience. As the Leviathans continued to pulse and shift, humanity felt a sense of unity and purpose that transcended borders, politics, and personal ambition. They had discovered something extraordinary, survived the tension of observation, and earned a place in the galaxy's ongoing story. They were no longer alone, no longer insignificant, and no longer unaware of the responsibilities that came with knowledge and power. The Leviathans had awakened, and so had humanity. And in that awakening, a new chapter began. one of exploration, understanding, and connection that would shape the future of Earth and the galaxy for generations to come. For T.